The scream came too late. By the time Aisha Brown realized the door had locked behind her, the room was already alive with whispers. Not human whispers. The air itself seemed to murmur, thick and restless, as if the walls were breathing secrets into her ears. The files slipped from her shaking hands and scattered papers across the cold tiled floor. On the far wall, a red bulb flickered once, twice, then went dark. Aisha backed away, her heels scraping the floor, until her shoulders hit something hard and wooden. "Mr. Carter," she called, her voice cracking. "Sir, I brought the file you asked for." No answer. Instead, the temperature dropped. Her breath turned white in front of her face. The faint smell of iron filled her nose, sharp and bitter. Then she saw it. A symbol, freshly drawn, glowing faintly on the floor. It was a circle crossed by jagged lines, like claw marks, and in the center sat a shallow bowl filled with something dark and thick. Blood. Aisha's knees buckled. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure it could be heard outside the room. She spun toward the door and pulled the handle with all her strength. Locked. Behind her, something moved. Not fast, not slow, just enough to let her know she was no longer alone. The whispers grew louder. That was the moment she understood the terrible truth. She was never supposed to leave this room. And all she had done was drop a file. The sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere behind the walls, circling, closing in. A shadow stretched across the floor, long and twisted, bending in ways no human body should bend. Aisha screamed again. Then everything went black. 2 days earlier, Aisha Brown's biggest worry had been her bus arriving late. She stood at the corner of Jefferson Avenue, clutching her handbag, watching the sun rise over the city. The morning air smelled of roasted corn from a nearby street vendor and fresh rain from the night before. It was just another workday, another routine morning. Aisha was 24, quiet, hardworking, and proud of her job as an administrative assistant at Carter & Gray Holdings. It wasn't her dream job, but it paid the bills and helped her send money back home to her grandmother in Louisiana, who raised her on old stories and even older warnings. "Some doors," her grandmother used to say, "don't look dangerous until you open them." Aisha had laughed at those words for years. At Carter & Gray, Aisha was known as reliable. She arrived early, left late, and never asked unnecessary questions. Her boss, Malcolm Carter, noticed that. Too much, some would say. Mr. Carter was a respected businessman, polished suits, calm voice, always smiling but never with his eyes. People said he was powerful, well-connected, and impossible to challenge. That Monday morning, he called Aisha into his office. "Aisha," he said, folding his hands on his desk, "I need you to do me a small favor this evening." She nodded. "Of course, sir." "There's a file," he continued, sliding a slim brown folder across the desk. "Very important. I forgot it at our old annex building on Greenwood Street. I need you to drop it off there after work. Just place it in my office on the 3rd floor." Aisha hesitated. "The Greenwood building, I thought that place was closed." "It is," he said quickly, smiling. "But I still use my office there. Security will let you in." Something about the way he said it made her uneasy, but she needed this job. Rent was due. Her grandmother's medicine wasn't cheap. "I'll do it," Aisha replied. Mr. Carter's smile widened. That afternoon, her coworker Denise leaned over her desk. "Girl, you going to Greenwood after dark?" Aisha frowned. "How did you know?" Denise lowered her voice. "That building has stories, real ones. People say strange things happen there. Lights turning on by themselves. Security guards quitting without notice." Aisha forced a laugh. "You watch too many mystery videos." "Maybe," Denise said. "Just be careful." As the workday ended, rain began to fall again, soft but steady. Aisha took the bus across town, watching the city change through the foggy window. Bright shops faded into empty streets. Streetlights flickered. The Greenwood building appeared at the end of the road like a forgotten giant. It was older than the rest of the block, dark bricks cracked with age, vines crawling up its sides. Only one window glowed faintly on the third floor. Security waved her in without a word. Inside, the building smelled of dust and old paper. Her footsteps echoed as she climbed the stairs, each step louder than the last. She reached the third floor and followed the signs to Mr. Carter's office. The door was open. The room was dark, except for a single desk lamp. Aisha stepped inside. That was when the door slammed shut behind her. And now, standing in the same room, 2 days later in that moment of terror, Aisha felt the truth closing around her like a trap. Whatever Mr. Carter was involved in, whatever secrets lived in this building, she had walked straight into it. The shadow on the floor lifted itself, stretching taller, thicker, forming something almost human. Almost. A low voice spoke, not to her ears, but directly into her chest. "Deliver the file," it said. Aisha looked down. The scattered papers were no longer papers. They were covered in symbols, names, dates. Her name was written there too. And just as the shadow reached for her, the red bulb above flickered back to life, revealing a second figure standing in the corner, watching her with familiar eyes. Eyes that belonged to someone she trusted. Aisha opened her mouth to speak, and the lights went out again. Chapter 2. The emergency lights flickered back on, bathing the room in a dull red glow. Aisha's heart slammed against her ribs as she stared at the figure in the corner. The shadow that had reached for her dissolved like smoke, slipping back into the walls, but the person standing there remained solid. It was Denise. Her coworker stood with her arms folded, face calm, eyes steady, as if she had been expecting Aisha all along. "Denise," Aisha whispered, "what are you doing here?" Denise stepped forward slowly. "I told you to be careful." Aisha shook her head, backing away. "This isn't funny. Mr. Carter said no one else would be here." Denise sighed, almost sadly. "Mr. Carter says a lot of things." The door behind Aisha clicked, unlocked. Before Aisha could react, Denise grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the exit. They ran down the hallway as the whispers rose again, angry now, bouncing off the walls. Doors rattled. Something heavy slammed against the ceiling above them. They didn't stop running until they burst outside into the rain. Aisha bent over, gasping for air, rain soaking her hair and clothes. "You knew," she said between breaths. "You knew something was wrong." Denise looked back at the building, her jaw tight. "I knew enough to know you shouldn't have gone in alone." They stood there in silence as the Greenwood building loomed behind them, dark and quiet, as if nothing strange had happened at all. "You're coming with me," Denise said finally. "There's somewhere you need to go." They drove across town to a small diner that stayed open late. The kind of place where the coffee was strong and the booths were worn smooth by years of late-night conversations. Denise ordered 2 coffees and slid into the booth across from Aisha. "Start talking," Aisha said. "Now." Denise wrapped her hands around her mug. "Carter and Gray isn't just a company, it's a front." "For what?" Aisha asked. Denise hesitated. "For binding contracts." Aisha frowned. "Like legal contracts?" "No," Denise said quietly. "Spiritual ones." Aisha laughed once, sharp and nervous. "You're telling me my boss is some kind of, what, cult leader?" Denise didn't smile. "I'm telling you that the Greenwood building sits on land that was used for rituals over 100 years ago. People were brought there against their will. Promises were made. Lives were traded." Aisha felt a chill crawl up her spine. Memories of her grandmother's stories flooded back. Warnings about old places, old debts. "Mr. Carter inherited those contracts," Denise continued. "And he's been renewing them, using people who don't know what they're carrying." "The file," Aisha whispered. Denise nodded. "That file wasn't paperwork. It was a list of names, new names." Aisha swallowed, "Including mine." "Yes." Rain tapped against the diner windows as silence settled between them. "Why me?" Aisha asked. Denise leaned closer. "Because you fit the pattern. Young, no parents watching over you, tied to old bloodlines." Aisha stiffened. "What bloodline?" Denise's eyes softened. Your grandmother never told you everything, did she? Aisha shook her head slowly. Before Denise could say more, her phone buzzed. She checked the screen and cursed under her breath. He knows, she said. Knows what? That I pulled you out. As if summoned by her words, the diner lights flickered. Conversations around them faded, voices dropping into uneasy murmurs. The waitress froze mid-step. A tall man in a dark suit stepped through the diner door, rain sliding off his shoulders. Malcolm Carter. He smiled when he saw Aisha. There you are, he said warmly. I was worried you didn't finish the delivery. Aisha stood up, hands shaking. You lied to me. Mr. Carter's smile didn't fade. I protected you. There's a difference. Denise stood too, placing herself slightly in front of Aisha. She's done, Carter. Find someone else. Mr. Carter's eyes hardened. You forget your place. The air thickened. Aisha felt the same pressure she'd felt in the office, pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. You can't force her, Denise said. I don't have to, Mr. Carter replied calmly. She already accepted. He looked at Aisha. You took the file, you entered the room, you crossed the threshold. The diner lights went out. In the darkness, whispers returned, crawling over Aisha's skin. When the lights came back on, Mr. Carter was gone. So was Denise. Aisha stood alone in the diner, every other customer frozen like statues, eyes empty, mouths slightly open. On the table in front of her sat the brown file. Closed. Her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. Tomorrow, it read, you finish what you started. Aisha stared at the file, her reflection staring back at her in the polished surface of the table. She realized then that running away might no longer be an option. And whatever was tied to her name was waking up. Chapter 3. Aisha didn't sleep that night. The brown file lay on her kitchen table like a living thing, quiet but heavy with presence. Every time she looked away, she felt certain it had moved closer. The whispering didn't follow her home, but the silence was worse. It felt watched. At dawn, her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it ring twice before answering. Hello. Good morning, Aisha, Mr. Carter's voice said, smooth and calm. I trust you rested well. She tightened her grip on the phone. Where is Denise? A pause. Safe for now. For now, Aisha snapped. What do you want from me? You've already been told, he replied. Completion. The line went dead. Aisha stood in her tiny apartment, heart racing. She thought about calling the police, but what would she say? That her boss was chasing her with haunted paperwork and whispering buildings. They would laugh. Or worse, they would send her right back to him. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind again. Some doors don't look dangerous until you open them. She opened the file. Inside were dozens of pages, yellowed and brittle, covered in the same symbols she had seen in the Greenwood office. Names filled the margins. Some were crossed out. Some were circled in red. Dates followed each one. At the very end was a folded page. Aisha Brown. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The page was different, newer, written in ink that shimmered faintly under the light. Bearer of witness blood, it read. Key to release. Aisha felt dizzy. Release what? She whispered. A knock sounded at her door. She jumped, slamming the file shut. The knock came again, louder. Aisha, a familiar voice called. It's me. She recognized the voice instantly. Her grandmother, Mama Ruth. Aisha rushed to the door and flung it open. Mama Ruth stood there with her walking stick and headscarf, eyes sharp and alert as ever. You didn't answer your phone, Mama Ruth said, stepping inside. And I felt something move. Aisha's throat tightened. You knew. Mama Ruth sat down heavily, looking at the file on the table. I prayed you never see that. What is it? Aisha asked. What am I? Mama Ruth closed her eyes for a moment. Long ago, our people were chosen to watch, not to act, to remember names, to keep records so evil wouldn't erase its own crimes. The contracts, Aisha said. Yes, Mama Ruth replied. Men like your Mr. Carter learned how to twist those records. They learned that if they controlled the list, they controlled who paid the price. Aisha's chest tightened. And me. You were never meant to be a sacrifice, Mama Ruth said firmly. You were meant to be a witness. That bloodline passed to you. Aisha laughed bitterly. Doesn't feel like much of a gift. Mama Ruth reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Witnesses can still choose. Another knock interrupted them, sharp and urgent. Mama Ruth stood slowly. He's here. The apartment door creaked open before Aisha could stop it. Mr. Carter stepped inside as if he owned the place. Ruth Brown, he said respectfully. It's been a long time. Mama Ruth straightened. You should have left this family alone. Mr. Carter glanced at Aisha. I tried too, but old systems require maintenance. You're using her, Mama Ruth said. I'm offering her purpose, he replied. Tonight the contract renews. She can stand with us or be consumed by it. Aisha's stomach dropped. Consumed how? Mr. Carter's eyes flickered, just for a second, like all the others who tried to walk away. Mama Ruth stepped in front of Aisha. She will not go. Mr. Carter smiled. She already has. He gestured toward the window. Outside, the Greenwood building's top-floor light flickered on, visible even from miles away. Midnight, he said. Bring the file. Then he was gone. Mama Ruth turned to Aisha, fear and resolve mixing in her eyes. We don't have much time, she said. If he completes the renewal, the contracts will bind another generation. Aisha looked at the file, then at her grandmother. Then we stop him. Mama Ruth nodded slowly. That means breaking a rule our family has followed for 100 years. Aisha swallowed. Which rule? Mama Ruth's voice dropped to a whisper. Witnesses never interfere. And as the clock on the wall ticked closer to midnight, Aisha realized that choosing to interfere might cost her more than her job. It might cost her life. Chapter 4. By nightfall, the city felt different. Aisha noticed it first in the air. It was heavier, as if the sky itself was pressing down. Streetlights flickered even on busy roads, and the usual noise of traffic seemed muted, like the world was holding its breath. Aisha sat in the back seat of Mama Ruth's old car, clutching the brown file to her chest. The closer they got to Greenwood Street, the warmer the file became, almost like it had a pulse. Don't open it again, Mama Ruth warned, eyes fixed on the road. Once is enough. Aisha nodded. What happens if we fail? Mama Ruth didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched until the Greenwood building appeared ahead, tall and dark against the night sky. Then the contracts renew, Mama Ruth said at last, and the ones already bound will never be free. They parked across the street. The building looked abandoned, but Aisha could see faint movement behind the third-floor windows, shadows sliding where no people stood. Mama Ruth opened the glove compartment and pulled out a small cloth bundle. Inside was a short blade, dull with age but carefully wrapped. This blade has cut names from the list before, Mama Ruth said, but never a living one. Aisha stared at it. You mean I have to? No, Mama Ruth interrupted. You don't cut flesh, you cut the bond, the name. Aisha's hands shook as she took the blade. And Mr. Carter. Mama Ruth's jaw tightened. Men like him don't disappear easily. They crossed the street together. The front door of the Greenwood building creaked open on its own, as if welcoming them. Inside, the smell of iron and dust returned instantly. The whispers rose again, louder this time, overlapping voices speaking names Aisha didn't recognize. Some she did. Her legs felt weak as they climbed the stairs. On the third floor, the office door stood open, glowing with red light. Mr. Carter waited inside. You came, he said pleasantly. I hoped you would. Denise stood beside him, eyes glassy, posture stiff. She didn't look at Aisha. What did you do to her? Aisha demanded. Nothing she didn't agree to, Mr. Carter replied. Loyalty has its rewards. Mama Ruth stepped forward. Let the girl go. Mr. Carter laughed softly. You taught her too much for that. He gestured toward the floor. The symbol glowed brighter now, the bowl at its center filled to the brim. Names floated above it like smoke. Bring the file, he said to Aisha. Aisha hesitated. The whispers surged, pressing against her ears. Images flashed through her mind, people collapsing, screaming, vanishing into darkness. She understood then. Every crossed-out name in the file had paid a price. She stepped forward and placed the file on the desk. Mr. Carter smiled. But Aisha didn't step back. Instead, she opened the file and flipped to the last page. Her name shimmered under the red light. Mama Ruth moved fast. She slashed the blade across the page. The room screamed. Not a human scream, but something deeper, older. The walls shook. The red light flickered wildly. Mr. Carter staggered back. What have you done? Aisha felt something tear loose inside her, like a chain snapping. The whispers turned into howls. Denise collapsed to the floor, gasping, her eyes clearing. Aisha, she whispered. The symbols on the floor cracked, glowing lines breaking apart. Mr. Carter roared in anger. You think this ends it? The building groaned, the floor splitting beneath their feet. Aisha grabbed Denise while Mama Ruth pulled her toward the door. They ran as the Greenwood building began to collapse inward, shadows spilling from every crack. They burst outside just as the third floor caved in, swallowing the office in a cloud of dust and darkness. When the dust settled, the building stood silent again. Too silent. Mr. Carter was gone. Denise leaned against Aisha, shaking. Is it over? Mama Ruth stared at the building, her expression grim. One contract is broken, she said, but the system remains. Aisha looked down at the file. The pages were blank now. Except for one. A new list was forming. And at the top, written in fresh ink, was a single name. Malcolm Carter. Aisha realized then that breaking the rules had consequences. And the story was far from finished. The days that followed felt unreal. Aisha couldn't sleep. Every time her eyes closed, she saw the Greenwood building twisting in shadows, the red light flickering in her mind. She thought she had stopped Mr. Carter, or at least delayed him, but Mama Ruth had been clear. One broken contract did not end the system. Denise stayed with her now, recovering slowly. The fear in her eyes made Aisha realize just how close they had come to becoming another name on that cursed list. I can't believe it, Denise whispered one evening as they sat in Aisha's apartment, that you actually did it. You cut your own name from the contracts. Aisha didn't smile. It wasn't me. It was Mama Ruth's bloodline guiding me. She trailed off, staring at the brown file now lying blank on the table. She couldn't bring herself to open it again. Mama Ruth had been more quiet than usual, spending hours in prayer, her walking stick tapping softly against the floor as she moved through the apartment. The old woman seemed older somehow, weighed down by secrets she hadn't revealed. Why did Carter target me? Aisha asked finally, unable to contain herself. Mama Ruth turned to her, face grave. You're not just a witness, Aisha. You carry something in your bloodline that can undo the system. That's why he wanted you. He knows you're different. Denise shivered. I don't get it. How can someone like him exist in our world? And how do you even fight him? You don't fight him head-on, Mama Ruth said. You work with what he fears most: knowledge, records, the list, the contracts themselves. Aisha stared at the blank pages. Knowledge. That was all she had. But it was enough, wasn't it? She remembered the feeling when she cut her name from the list. The whispering, the snapping chains, the surge of freedom. That sensation had to mean something. Her phone buzzed, startling them. An unknown number. She ignored it at first, but then curiosity, or perhaps dread, pushed her to answer. Good evening, Aisha, a voice purred from the other side. Smooth, controlled, terrifying. I see you've disrupted my plans. Clever. Too clever, perhaps. Aisha froze. Carter, she said, though her voice trembled. What do you want now? Only to remind you, he replied, that contracts can be rewritten, people can be replaced, and witnesses can be turned into pawns. The line went dead. Aisha dropped the phone. Denise grabbed her arm. What does he mean, pawns? Mama Ruth took a deep breath. He knows your bloodline can undo him. That's why he'll try to use anything to bring you back into the system. He's patient. He's clever. And he will wait. Aisha's stomach turned. Wait for what? Until you make a mistake, Mama Ruth said quietly. Until you act in fear or anger. The room grew heavy with silence. Aisha knew that the fight wasn't over. Far from it. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind went over every moment in the Greenwood building. The red light, the whispers, Mr. Carter's calm, terrifying smile. She realized then that nothing would ever feel normal again. Not work, not the city, not even her own home. And yet, she also felt something she hadn't felt before. Power. A subtle, almost invisible strength that came from knowing she had faced the system and survived. She didn't notice at first, but the brown file wasn't entirely blank. A small symbol had appeared in the corner of the last page, a mark she didn't recognize, glowing faintly in the moonlight that spilled through the window. Aisha leaned closer, her breath caught. It was a symbol of protection, one her grandmother had described but never drawn. Whoever had placed it, it was Carter. It was a warning. Aisha's phone buzzed again. This time a message appeared. No number, no name, just words. Tonight, Greenwood, he returns. Aisha felt the air tighten around her. She looked at Mama Ruth, but the old woman's eyes were closed, deep in meditation. Denise whispered, "We can't let him win, can we?" Aisha clenched her fists, her mind racing. "We'll stop him, somehow, but we have to be ready for whatever comes." Outside, the city seemed calm, but the wind carried a faint whisper, almost like laughter. Somewhere, in the shadows, Malcolm Carter was waiting. And Aisha knew one thing for certain. The nightmare was far from over. If you're captivated by Aisha's story so far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next twist. Also, comment below, have you ever had a moment where you thought you were safe, only to realize danger was closer than you imagined? Where are you watching this from right now? Chapter 6. The night came faster than Aisha expected. By dusk, the city streets seemed emptier, the usual hum of traffic replaced by an eerie silence. Even the streetlights flickered uncertainly, casting long, wavering shadows. Aisha, Mama Ruth, and Denise made their way toward Greenwood Street again, the brown file clutched tightly in Aisha's hands. "This time," Mama Ruth said, her voice low and steady, "we don't just cut names, we prepare for him." Aisha's heart raced. The last time she had only reacted. This time she had to be proactive. They parked a few blocks away. The Greenwood building loomed ahead, tall and black against the night sky. The top floor's red light flickered in warning, or perhaps in challenge. As they entered the building, the familiar smell of iron and dust filled the air. Whispers began almost immediately, soft at first, then rising into a chorus of voices, speaking names in rapid succession. Denise shivered. "I hate this place," she whispered. "You must focus," Mama Ruth said. "Remember what you've learned. Control the fear, control the names." Aisha nodded. The file throbbed in her hands. The symbols seemed to pulse faintly, almost alive. She flipped it open to the last page. The new list had grown. Several names appeared, including Mr. Carter, at the top. A shadow moved at the far end of the hallway. It was him, Malcolm Carter. Calm, collected, terrifying. His presence alone seemed to make the whispers swirl faster. "You've come back," he said, smiling. "I see the file survived your little stunt." Aisha swallowed. "It's over, Carter." He laughed, a cold, echoing sound. "Do you really think that one broken contract matters? One file, one witness?" Mama Ruth stepped forward. "It matters to her," she said, "and that's enough." Carter's smile widened. "Clever, but witness or not, you cannot stop the system." The room seemed to close in. The shadows stretched, bending unnaturally. The red light above flickered violently. Aisha felt the pulse of the file grow stronger in her hands. She remembered what her grandmother had said about her bloodline. Knowledge is power, but only if wielded with courage. Taking a deep breath, she set the file on the floor and drew a circle around it with chalk Mama Ruth had given her. She cut through the names with the ceremonial blade, one by one, her movements deliberate, focused. The whispers rose to a crescendo, then fell silent as the final name was severed. Carter. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the room shook violently. Papers flew, shadows twisted, and the red light shattered. Carter staggered back, his calm facade cracking. "You think this ends with a name?" he growled. Aisha stood her ground. "It ends because you've underestimated me." The building groaned, as if alive, collapsing inward slightly around them. Dust and debris swirled, obscuring vision. Aisha grabbed Denise's hand while Mama Ruth guided them toward the exit. Outside, they paused to catch their breath. Carter had vanished again, but the ground still trembled faintly, and the faint echo of whispers lingered in the air. Aisha looked at the file. The names were gone, clean, except for one herself. A new message appeared on her phone. Unknown number. "Clever girl, but cleverness can be dangerous. You will meet me where it began." Aisha felt a chill. Greenwood Street. Mama Ruth placed her hand on Aisha's shoulder. "He's challenging you now. Whatever happens, remember your bloodline protects you, but only if you trust it." Denise shivered. "Are we ready for whatever comes next?" Aisha's jaw tightened. "We have to be." The night wind carried a faint whisper, laughter almost human, almost not. Aisha's heart beat faster. She knew this wasn't just a challenge anymore. It was a declaration. Somewhere Carter was preparing. Somewhere the system waited. And tomorrow, Aisha realized, she would have to face him alone. The sun rose pale over the city, but Aisha didn't notice it. Her thoughts were consumed by the message she had received the night before. "You will meet me where it began." Greenwood Street, that building, that nightmare, and she knew she had no choice. Mama Ruth packed a small satchel. "I'll come with you," she said. "But remember, Carter thrives on fear. You must remain calm." Denise shook her head. "I can't do this. I'll wait here. I don't think I can face him again." Aisha nodded. "I understand, but I need to go. This is my fight." The drive to Greenwood was quiet, only the soft hum of tires over wet asphalt. Aisha clutched the brown file on her lap. Its blank pages still pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. She knew the file carried power, but she didn't fully understand it yet. The building stood there, more ominous than ever. The red light in the top-floor office glowed steadily, no longer flickering, an invitation or a warning. Aisha stepped inside. The air was thick with the familiar metallic scent, and the whispers returned immediately, circling her head. Names, hundreds of names, some she recognized, others she didn't. And above them all, one name glowed faintly, hers. "Clever girl," a voice said. Smooth, calm, terrifying. Malcolm Carter stepped from the shadows, his dark suit impeccable, his expression unreadable. "You survived the last attempt. I admit I'm impressed." Aisha tightened her grip on the file. "It's over, Carter." He laughed softly. "Over? No, it never ends. It's a cycle. A system. You may have cut your name from the contracts, but every action has a consequence." The room darkened as shadows pooled around him, stretching unnaturally toward the ceiling. Carter raised his hand, and the shadows formed into indistinct shapes, humanoid, but twisted, almost grotesque. Aisha swallowed her fear. She knew what she had to do. She placed the file on the floor, opened it, and began writing. Not names, not dates, symbols. Marks her grandmother had taught her, marks meant to bind, to protect, to disrupt. The file pulsed beneath her hands, reacting to her intent, glowing brighter with every line she drew. Carter's shadows hissed and lunged toward her. She moved faster, tracing symbols with precision, speaking the protective words softly under her breath. The shadows recoiled, then retreated into the walls. "You can't stop me," Carter shouted, his calm facade finally cracking. "I don't need to stop you," Aisha said firmly. "I just need to break your hold." The file glowed blindingly, and Aisha felt a wave of energy surge through her. The shadows screamed, twisting and collapsing in on themselves. Carter staggered back, shielding his eyes. Then silence. The room was still. The red light above flickered once, then went out. Aisha's chest heaved. The whispers were gone, the shadows had vanished, Carter was gone. For a moment, she thought it was over. But then the file shook violently on the floor. Aisha bent down, heart pounding. A new name appeared, written in ink that burned faintly in the dim light. Her own. Somewhere, a laugh echoed, cold, cruel, and unmistakably Carter. Aisha realized in that moment, escaping the Greenwood building didn't mean she had escaped him. Not yet. And the nightmare was far from finished. Aisha ran through the streets, the night air sharp against her skin. The city felt alien now, empty, dark, as if it were holding its breath. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the file, the symbols, and Carter's words. Her name had appeared again. That meant he wasn't finished. He was waiting, planning, preparing. Mama Ruth stayed close behind her, walking with a calm determination that made Aisha both grateful and envious. Denise had refused to come, insisting that facing Carter again was a death sentence. But Aisha couldn't wait. She had to confront him, not run. They reached Aisha's apartment. The door was slightly ajar. Heart pounding, she nudged it open. Inside, the room was empty, but not untouched. The brown file lay open on the floor. Pages flipped on their own, the symbols shimmering faintly in the dim light. And across the top of the last page was a single new line of writing, bold and deliberate. Tonight, you will decide. Aisha froze. Mama Ruth's eyes narrowed. He's challenging you to finish this. Face him or risk the system claiming you. Aisha swallowed hard. I can't run anymore. I have to end this once and for all. The city's clock struck midnight. Aisha took a deep breath, her hand trembling as she closed the file. She knew the stakes. Carter wasn't just a man, he was the embodiment of the system, a shadow that had persisted for generations. And the system never forgave weakness. When they arrived at Greenwood Street again, the building seemed to pulse in the darkness. The red light was steady, almost like a heartbeat. The whispers began as soon as they entered, not loud, but insistent, repeating names in a rhythm that felt like a warning drum. Carter stood in the top-floor office waiting, but this time he looked different, less composed, more tense. Aisha sensed fear, barely hidden behind his eyes. He had underestimated her. You came, he said, voice low. I knew you would, and yet I wonder, are you ready for what comes next? I am, Aisha said, stepping forward, holding the file tightly. The shadows around him twisted, forming into humanoid shapes again, but they hesitated as Aisha opened the file. Symbols flew across the pages faster than she could follow, reacting to her intent, protecting her as she traced new patterns. The whispers rose in fury, almost screaming. Stop this, Carter shouted. You cannot destroy what I have built. Aisha's pulse raced. She knew this was the final test. If she failed, the system would reclaim her, rewrite her, erase her. She had one chance. She raised her hand and pressed it against the open file. Energy surged through her, connecting her bloodline to the symbols, binding them, sealing them. The shadows recoiled, the whispers turned into a wail, and Carter's voice faltered. No, he whispered. The building shuddered violently. The top-floor light shattered in a burst of red sparks. Shadows screamed, twisting and collapsing inward until only silence remained. Aisha fell to her knees, breathing heavily. The file lay closed in front of her, blank once more, but this time the final page remained empty. No names, no symbols, no threats. Carter was gone. Mama Ruth knelt beside her. It is done, she said softly. The contracts are broken, the system has been disrupted. Denise appeared behind them, relief written across her face. I didn't think you'd make it, she said. Aisha looked up at the empty night sky. For the first time in days, she felt free. But she knew the shadows could return. Carter might return. The system might rebuild. But she had survived. She had fought, and she had won for now. The city seemed alive again, ordinary. The wind carried no whispers, the streets were familiar, and the night felt safe almost. Aisha realized she had changed. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a guardian, a protector, someone who could stand against darkness even when it seemed unstoppable. And somewhere, deep inside, she knew this wasn't the end. It was a beginning. The days after Greenwood felt surreal. Aisha walked through the city with a cautious calm, the brown file tucked safely in her bag. The air no longer carried whispers. The streets no longer trembled under unseen weight. Carter had vanished, and for the first time in weeks, Aisha felt the possibility of normal life returning. Yet she knew better. Normal was a fragile illusion. Mama Ruth had returned to her small apartment, teaching Aisha how to understand her bloodline, the powers of the witness, and the protective symbols. Denise had also joined, helping Aisha study the patterns of the file and how the contracts had been manipulated over generations. Each day brought new knowledge, a deeper understanding of the system she had almost fallen victim to. Aisha could feel the pulse of the city now, subtle but constant. The energy of people, of old promises, of hidden debts. She knew the shadows hadn't disappeared entirely. They were waiting, but she had learned to face them. One evening, as she closed the file and placed it carefully on a high shelf, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her hands trembled, but she answered. Clever, the voice said. Calm, cold, undeniably Carter. You've disrupted the cycle, but cycles always return. Remember, girl, some systems are eternal. The line went dead. Aisha exhaled slowly, staring at the phone. Her heart still raced, but this time she felt something new, resolve. Carter could threaten, could plan, could try again, but she had survived him once. She had knowledge, courage, and her grandmother's teachings, and she would not be afraid. That night, Aisha walked to the small park near her apartment. The city was quiet, and for the first time in weeks, the stars seemed bright. She thought of Greenwood, of the red light, of the whispers, and of Carter's shadowy threats. She also thought of her bloodline, her heritage, and the power she had discovered within herself. The file, sitting safely at home, no longer felt like a curse. It was a tool, a record of truth, a guide, a shield. She realized then that her life would never be the same. There would always be danger, always threats, always whispers in the dark. But now, Aisha knew she could face them. She could protect herself, protect others, and ensure the system that had terrorized countless generations would never rise again, at least, not without her knowing. From that night on, Aisha Brown became more than an administrative assistant. She became a guardian, a witness who remembered, a protector who acted, and a force that shadows could never fully consume. And somewhere in the distance, a figure watched, not yet defeated, not yet gone, Carter waiting, planning, but Aisha was ready. She smiled faintly, looking at the stars. The nightmare might return, but so would she. The city slept, unaware of the battles waged in the shadows. But Aisha knew the truth. Even in darkness, courage could shine brighter than fear. The story ended, not with silence but with readiness. The nightmare had ended for now.